Now we're going to try this one here. It's 3 tan of 3x equals square root of 3. So the first thing we would do here to isolate the trig function would be to divide by 3, just like the previous ones. So now we have the tan of 3x equals square root of 3 over 3, which we know this is just equal to the 1 over the square root of 3. So now we think of that idea the inverse again. So now I'm looking where 3x is going to actually equal. So again, I think of the idea of the unit circle here. And tangent's positive there, so it's going to be over here in the first quadrant. And then that's going to be opposite over adjacent. And then I know the hypotenuse has to be the 2. So this is my special triangle, and I also know that this right here is pi over 2 degrees. Now for these directions, they want from 0 to 2 pi. So it's just something for us to think about as we go through these problems. So this tells me then that that first answer would be pi halves. Okay, now again, keep in mind here, I'm also going to take a look at where 3x is equal to. Now think about this. It's generally for tangent that the period is pi instead of the 2 pi for the previous problem. So then this one here would actually be pi here, so it'll be the pi halves plus, and if it's pi, I can write 2 pi over 2 just to get the same denominators. So I'm really looking where 3x is equal to 3 pi over 2. Okay, and that would be the next one that I would get. So I'd actually be solving that equation now. And then would I have to go any further? I could check, right, to see if that would be useful here. So then the next one after that then would be 3x equals, and that'd be another, so that would be 5 pi halves. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to actually solve these and see if we go beyond the 2 pi. So for this first one, I'm going to divide by 3. And the first one, and when I divide by 3, is going to give me x equals pi sixth, which we know that would be within that range. And then here I'm going to get, excuse me, I'm going to end up getting x equals pi halves once I divide it. Hopefully you're okay with that. And then for this one, this is going to be x equals 5 pi over 6, which is still good. Okay, how many more answers do you think we should get? And that's what we're going to find out. Okay, so then if I continue this process, so remember here, the last one I tried was 5 pi halves, and that was fine. So now I'm going to go further, so the next one's going to be 7 pi halves. Because remember, we're adding 2 pi halves every time because we're adding pi because the general period for tangent is pi. So then the next one then is going to be 3x equals 7 pi halves. And then when I divide by 3, x is going to be 7 pi sixths. So there's even more answers than this. So right now we have 4 answers. So then I keep going with this process. And then x is also going to equal 9 pi halves. And when I divide that, what's 9 pi halves? So I got x equals, or I should say 3x equals 9 pi halves. And when I divide that by 3, my x is going to equal 3 pi halves. And then the next one is 3x equals 11 pi halves. And then when I divide that, that's going to be x equals 11 pi sixths. And I think if I tried another one, it would have gone too far, because I will do it just to show you. So 3x equals 13 pi halves. When I divide that by 2, that's going to be x equals 13 pi over 6, which if you think about 2 pi is going to be 12 pi sixths. And this takes me beyond it right here. Okay, so all of our answers together, if we place them together, are going to be here. Here's our first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So we actually had 6 answers for this problem here, from 0 to 2 pi. So let's try this next problem. So let's try 2 square root of 3 cosine of x over 2 equals -3. Now this one looks terrible, but what I do first is I'm going to divide by 2 square root of 3, both sides. Because again, we're always trying to get that trig function isolated by itself and a number equaling on the other side. So those cancel here. And I end up getting from there cosine of x over 2 equaling, now if you guys notice this here, 3 over here, the 3 over the square root of 3, if I multiplied the top and the bottom by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3, I'm kind of working forwards and away here. This is going to equal -3 square root of 3 over, that would be 3 there, so that would be 6 altogether on the bottom, and these would simplify here. So this would be negative square root of 3 over 2. So that's what I'm going to write here. And now what I'm going to do from here is now we're going to look at the same idea again. So I draw the unit circle idea here. And then where cosine is negative at is going to be either in the second quadrant or the third quadrant. And when we look at this, it's going to be square root of 3 here. That's going to be 2, and that's going to be 1, and that's going to be 2, and that's going to be 1 there. Okay, so that's what we end up with in those 2 quadrants. So what is this angle for us? Well, I have to understand this angle first, and I know that angle is going to be 60 degrees. Or this one we'll do in radians. So I'll say, since this is pi thirds, this angle here is going to be 2 pi thirds. So that's going to be 2 pi thirds for that angle. So I'm just going to write that down. So cosine of, so I'm just going to write this down. X over 2 is going to equal 2 pi thirds. And now I want to find all the answers, so we're going to see what that means too. So now I'm also going to get x over 2 is also going to equal, I'm going to have to go further than that one now, change my color. And now I'm going to go from here all the way down to there, and that's going to be 3 pi thirds if I was at pi. And then I go a pi thirds more, so this one's going to be 4 pi thirds. And that's what we end up with all the way around, 4 pi thirds. So now if we're looking for all answers here, I'm going to multiply 2 by both sides. So then here, my x is going to equal 4 pi thirds. And then for this one here, my x is going to equal 8 pi thirds. Now again, we're looking for all solutions here for this problem. So we have to understand what is the period for cosine of x over 2. And again, I think about that b again. My b here would be what, 1/2, wouldn't it? So since my b is 1/2, I would go 2 pi over 1/2. So I'm going to end up getting 4 pi for my period. So the reason why I have to bring this up now is because I'm thinking about generating all of the answers for these. So remember, I'm going to take that x for that first answer, and I'm going to get the 4 pi thirds. And now I'm going to have to add 4 pi to every one of those to generate all of the answers. So this is going to be 4 pi n, or 4 pi k. And then for the other one, that's going to be x equals. And this one here is going to be 8 pi thirds. And I'm going to have to add to that 4 pi n. So those would be all of the answers for that entire problem. Now I only have to write my answers this way when they don't put parameters like from 0 to 2 pi on there, or 0 to 360.